Welcome to your Unison Colour Pastel Challenge with me, Caitlin Heslop, on the theme of a vibrant still life. We are really excited about this pastel challenge because it's slightly different to challenges that we've had before. This pastel challenge offers you the opportunity to really make this vibrant still life your own. And the ways that we're going to do that is by offering tuition on how to actually create your still life setup, different approaches to choosing a vibrant or abstract colour palette, and possible ways of composing your image so that it's unique to you with the intentions that you have at the heart of your finished artwork. So in this introductory video, I'm going to be talking you through how you might select objects in your home, how you might think about approaching the materials that you need for this challenge, and just helping you get set up so that you're ready to get going on day one. So in terms of a still life setup, you will see behind me a selection of objects that I've gathered together from my home. I won't be using all of these in my still life setup, but I wanted to show you how I begin approaching setting up for a drawing or painting like this. So when I'm creating a composition, I think about a variety of things with my objects. These include different heights of objects. So I want to make sure that not everything is at the same height. I want to think about different colours and patterns. Some of the things that I include, I want them to be quite plain. Some of them I want to have different patterns on to bring that interest. I want there to be a variety of textures. And then I want to think about the overall complexity or simplicity of my composition. So sometimes I love a really jumbled still life setup and I try to capture everything. And other times I want to be really selective about just having a few key pieces and thinking about the ways that they're placed next to each other and how they interact with each other. In nearly every still life setup I do, I have one kind of key feature that I find really helpful. And for me, I love using it, but there's no pressure to include it. I love using a piece of fabric in my still life setups. This could be a piece of clothing, a tablecloth, a napkin, an old tea towel, just a rag you have at home. What I love about using fabric is it brings a sense of fluidity to my still life setup. I can wrap it around objects, I can spread it out. And it really can change the overall feel of the still life setup. If you don't feel confident about the selection of objects that you have at home, I will be providing you with an image of my still life setup and a selection of other still life setups so that you could work from one of those instead, and that will work just as well. So make sure that once you come to day one of this challenge that you've got your objects that you're wanting to use and you just play around with where you place them. I think about having kind of a main object that's the main feature that's a bit lower, and then having the other objects around it. So I've got a selection of kind of bowls, a nice plain wooden one, a patterned fruit bowl, or I've got here one of my grandparents' plates that has some lovely detailing on it. So I usually won't include many, I'll have maybe one, and then the other different objects at different heights around it. Okay, now in terms of the other materials that you need. So you're going to need some pastels for this challenge, and we have created a challenge set specifically for this vibrant still life challenge. So you can purchase the set, and that will help support you creating a final piece the same as my final piece. If, however, you would like to select your own abstract colour palette, in day one of this challenge, I will be talking you through some key principles when selecting pastel colours to go together to create a balanced colour palette, including warm and cool colours and light and dark colours, and giving you a few top tips for how sometimes I approach selecting my colour palette using inspiration from other artworks that I've seen or even my own photos or previous artworks. I will be demonstrating on Clairefontaine pastel matte paper for this challenge. It has a really distinct surface that holds the pastel on the page. It doesn't allow for much smudging, which works well for the style that I love to use in my drawings. But you are welcome to use any pastel paper that you have or that you like using yourself. If you want to make more use of smudging, you will probably want to think about using a slightly different paper. But I will be demonstrating with Clairefontaine pastel matte paper. I would also suggest having some paper and a pencil just so you can think about some quick, loose drawings to map out your final piece. We will be considering a few different compositional approaches, and I think that's a really key part to creating a successful artwork, is just to have that intention of what do I want the main focus of my drawing to be. And then I would also suggest that you have some fixatives. So I personally love the Unison Colour fixative. I find that it's a really effective fixative that has some UV protection in it as well. I often use fixative between different stages of my drawing because it just prevents smudging, keeps everything a little bit neater and prevents that kind of damage between layers. Some people love completing their whole piece before they add fixative, but because pastel is quite an unstable medium and can smudge really easily or be knocked quite easily, it's really important that you fix the pastel to the paper once you've completed your image. Wonderful. So let me just point out again some of these objects that I've got, so you've got a bit more of an idea of what you could include in your still life setup. So what I've found around my home is I've got, like I said, I've got my bowls and plates. I've even included a selection of fruit for different colours, different shapes, and that repetition of kind of a satsuma or a plum can be quite a helpful key through a composition. It can work really well. I've thought about maybe using different vases because these bring a lovely level of height. You can see that I've got 3 vases there, this brown vase and then the yellow fish vase and this darker vase here, all different heights and shapes. And I'll decide when I'm putting it together which work best with the setup that I'm using. I've got objects that are slightly plainer. For example, you will see here I've got just a wooden box. This is to add some height if I want to place an object on it, but also to add a little bit of simplicity to my still life setup. I also found these Russian dolls, which I haven't included in a still life setup before, but what I love about them is that they're almost identical objects, but with different heights and slightly different details. And that can be really nice, like I said, with the repetition of the fruit, to have some sense of repetition in your work. And then I've got a selection of fabric. I showed you this one, it's more lacy. This would give me detail without giving me too much colour to work with, not too much challenge of colour. But then I also have a much more complex, a much larger tablecloth that I can use. And what I'll do is once I've selected my objects, I'll think about which ones work best with which fabric. So either, and I usually choose one object or one piece as my main feature, the thing that I'm really excited about using. And so I will work around that. So let's say if I decided that this bowl was what I really wanted to focus on in this still life setup, I would then compare everything to this bowl. So I would think, do I love how that pattern feels with this bowl? Or actually, do I think that having a simpler fabric with this texture in could work well? What you can find helpful, and I would suggest to do, is actually make a few different still life setups, take photographs of them, and then you can actually compare them and go, oh, which one do I think comes across best in the photographs? Which one am I most excited to work from? Don't feel that you only get one shot at setting up your still life setup. You can take your time, and this is a really important part of creating a final piece that you're really happy with. And remember, we're going to be using an abstract colour palette, so don't worry too much if you're not sure if the colours go together, because you can alter the colours that you're going to be using across this pastel challenge. So hopefully that has made it clear what this pastel challenge is going to include. If you have any questions, please do put them in the Facebook group and we will answer them as promptly as we can. We're so excited to have you with us for this challenge and so excited to see what you create across the week. Happy pasteling!